Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today I want to talk about if you're a guitar player using Ableton Live and you want to recreate guitar tones and sounds inside of Ableton Live, and you want to do so using plugins, which means there's a software application running inside of the Ableton Live environment that lets you recreate sounds of classic tube amps and pedals and effects. If you've been around recording your guitar for a while, that's probably nothing groundbreaking, but that's what it is, meaning you're not going to be recording a mic'd up amp or even a pedal like Helix or Axe straight in. You're actually going to be just recording the dry signal. So I have a handful of recordings, just little snippets and bits and riffs that I recorded straight into my mixer with nothing on it, just simply the guitar itself. And it will sound something like this. Nothing terribly exciting. It sounds like something recorded directly with nothing on it, just naked going into a preamp, a mixer preamp, not a guitar preamp. So now what we're going to look at doing is taking plugins and making it sound like it's going through a whole guitar rig. If you are an Ableton user, I do want to first talk about there are some built-in tools to do this if you have the Ableton Live Suite version. If you have Light or Standard, this particular instrument, or not instrument, but effect, it's not included. You have to have the Ableton Live Suite version. But what they do have in there, they have a pedal effect, which is like a distortion pedal, an amp, and a cabinet, and I put a little reverb on here. These are all individual effects. What I did was I selected all of them once I add them to this track, Control G to make a group out of it. So now they're grouped together and I can turn them on and off with one shot. Also, when you group effects, this is a subject for another video. I'm not going to get too into it on this one, but you can have these macro controls, 8 controls that you can assign to different parameters. Let's say you had a controller with some knobs, and there's things like gain, reverb, the drive on the pedal, whatever, a handful of effects that were kind of go-to. You could have them set up on these macro knobs to where you didn't have to go in and find the specific effects. They're very, very easily accessible and assignable. Like I said, if you have an external controller. If you want to know more about that, let me know. That's a video for another day. So first and foremost, I'm going to turn this on and let you hear what it sounds like with this involved. And here we go. Without the plugin, with the plugins. A little bit of distortion. All right, it's usable. To be honest, it's not bad. It's not my go-to. I prefer third-party plugins, but very usable. So really quickly, let me explain the difference between an Ableton plugin and third-party. So Ableton has built-in, they call them audio effects. Essentially, they're plugins, and here's a list. And again, depending on the version of Ableton you have, this is the Ableton Suite version, so this has everything. Depending on the version, you may have some and not others. But basically, these are built in. Here are the advantages. The advantages are they're always there in Ableton. If you switch computers, if you save your project and take it to another computer that's running Ableton, they're going to be there. If you have a third-party plugin, third-party meaning another company made the plugin and you have added it to Ableton Live. If you switch Ableton Live to another computer and you don't install those third-party plugins, they're not there. Another example is I've got projects that date back 10 plus years of just song ideas or just things I've done, and I'll open them up. And I was using, maybe whatever guitar plugin I liked 10 years ago, and I'm no longer using it. So when I open it up, that plugin's not there. So in that case, what I do is just replace it with the plugin I'm using, which is, involves a little bit of time. I have to set the new plugin up, dial the sounds in like I want and all that. Don't mind doing it. It's worth the trouble. But just saying, if you can use Ableton's built-in plugins, even better. Not so much applicable to this guitar tone thing that we're looking at today, but in terms of compressors and EQs, saturators, different things. I have a number of third-party plugins I like using. but I do try to use the Ableton plugins when I can. The other advantage is because Ableton plugins are built inside of Ableton, they generally use less computer power, less DSP. So you can usually have more instances if you have third-party plugins that use a lot of horsepower in terms of computing power. It can tax your system pretty quickly. So, arguably there are third-party plugins that are better than Ableton plugins. Companies that specialize, Universal Audio, Waves, Sound Toys. There are all kinds of ones out there, and a lot of them I use and like. But just to make you aware of the difference, if you're brand new to this and you're not sure what a plugin is or what's the difference between an Ableton effect and plugin, that's in general very simplistic what the difference is. So having said that, let's get into more guitar specific stuff. I'm going to kind of leave this Ableton effect in the past, and we're going to look at 3 different third-party plugins and differences and why you might want to use different ones or just to show you how it works. So on the first track here, I have S-Gear, which is a really good sounding plugin. It's been around for a long time. I don't know that the core amp modeling has been updated so much. They've added a few things like pedals, and I'm not sure what else they've added, but they just sound good and they feel good when you play them. It's really good stuff. The other one being Helix Native, which is basically the software version of Helix. Fantastic. If you're familiar with the Helix ecosystem, it's everything in Helix, and it's great. Absolutely love it. The third thing we're going to be using is the ToneX, which is a little different because it's capture based. It's not, it's not based on amp models. It's based on captures of amps. I've got another video, and I'll try to link that in the description below, where I talk about the difference. Bird's eye view, basically a capture based software takes a particular amp with particular settings and it captures that. Whereas an amp model, they go through on the component level and model everything. So with amp modeling, you can have complete control. Any tone that amp can produce, you can reproduce it with the adjusting settings. With the capture, you can't really change too much. You do have bass, middle, treble, volume, gain, but the thing is, these aren't the same as adjusting tone stacks on an amp. It's basically like, think about it as if you've recorded a guitar and you're using the bass, middle, treble on the recording console or your software virtual console to change those things. That's basically what you're doing. You're not changing the actual tone stack of the amp. So that's just, again, a bird's eye view of the difference between those 3. So, but I have all 3 pulled up because I want to kind of highlight, what a plugin does, the advantages, and then also the advantages of using multiple plugins, multiple instances of the plugin. So we'll take this first little piece of audio, and I'm going to use just S-Gear for now and show you kind of what we can do. So we've got this very basic chord strum. So it's clean right now. Let's say we want to just dirty up just a little bit. So now we've got it where it's got just a little bit of drive, not too much, but we could flip it over to overdrive. So the advantage of doing it this way is you can record one take, you can record it dry, and then you can decide, do I want this to be clean, a little crunchy, do I want it just full bore? That's the big advantage here, because if you record a mic'd up amp, it is what it is. If you record coming out of a pedal like a Helix or an Axe-Fx or ToneX, and you just record what it puts out into your DAW, in this case Ableton, it is what it is. It's there, it's printed. If you have a lot of heavy delay or effects, it's there. You cannot get rid of it. You cannot really change it. By recording dry, you can do whatever you want. If I wanted to throw, some delay on this, you can do that. Or I can take it off. I think I just, whoops. I'm trying to remember. It's been a minute since I've used S-Gear. Anyway, so that's the advantage. You can go back and add and subtract and do anything you want, which is really cool. Your options are unlimited at that point. So that kind of explains why you would use third-party plugins, what they are, how they work. I've got 3 different ones here, and the reason for that is I want to show you a cool trick. It's fun to double and triple track guitars, and I think if you're going to actually do this for recording, I recommend actually playing them multiple times because we're human, we're not robots. Every take is going to have some subtle differences, right? So I recommend doing that. But in this case, just to show you what I'm talking about, I'm going to have 3 different instances of plugins on here, and I'm going to create 3 different sounds. And I'm going to show you how whenever you do this, you can actually really fill out the spectrum of the audio spectrum with the guitar sound. The bass lives in part of the spectrum. The cymbals and drums are going to live in different places, the vocals, keyboards. So what you want as a guitar player is to find what part in the frequency spectrum the guitar is going to live in and kind of push out to the front, be heard more. You don't want to have it mixing with the frequencies of the bass guitar and kind of getting lost, right? So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to do, I've got played this little riff. I think it's this one. So this is a little Allman Brothers or Government Mule, Rockin' Horse. I can't remember who wrote it. They both played it. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set S-Gear to basically clean. This isn't a clean riff, but as I do this, you'll see why I'm doing this. So let's see what this sounds like on its own. Now, if I was to distort this plugin, that's more what you expect. That's a great sound. Great sound. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add this instance of Helix. Now, this is roughly based on the patch I use live. So it's going to be a little more upper mids and top end because it was put together to kind of cut through in a band setting. So here is what this sounds like with the same riff. Okay, so now I copied and pasted basically each time. So I'm going to come over to the third one, and this has the Tonex on it. And so I kind of have the clean for articulation is what I'm going for with the S-Gear. I've kind of got a distorted tone that's going to cut on the higher end with Helix. Now the Tonex, I'm using a bassman, which to me is always, I very rarely would use a bassman on its own. I always find them woofy, and the low mids are pretty heavy. It's just not my kind of thing. I know a lot of people love bassmans. They're great, but everyone has preferences. And generally speaking, a bassman is not mine. So here's what this sounds like. I think it's accurate representation and recreation of a bassman. Again, it's just not normally my go-to. Okay, so now you've heard the three different takes on this. So now let's see what happens when we put them all together. The clean is more for articulation. I've got Helix for more of the high upper mids, cutting, and then I'm covering the lower mids with the Tonex. Let's see what happens when we put them all together. So now I'm going to kind of go through and turn some on and off and let you hear the difference. I might mess around with the panning too, give some separation and see what that does. Now the distortions, it's kind of overpowering a little bit. The clean is a little more subtle, so I'm going to back the drives down just a little bit. Maybe pump this up a little. Let's just bring it all back together. So the clean has given me that articulation I'm looking for. The drives are covering all of the spectrum that I want. So I'm going to pan these just a little bit. I'm going to push the tone X to the right, Helix to the left just a little bit to give separation. Leave the clean running up the middle. So that I really like. I think that accomplishes everything I wanted to accomplish. So there's a way you can take and duplicate, multiple parts and put different plugins and cover different types of tones and sounds. That way you're not limited to one. And this is a very easy way to do it because I only played it once. I copied and pasted. Again, if I'm going to really, really do this, I would recommend, go ahead and play it 3 different times, just because if you want the maximum effect, because you're going to get little nuances in your playing, a little bit of differences, but this works really, really well. So it's, it just works. It's really fun. It's a good way. This multi-tracking is something that's used on a lot of albums. I remember listening to an interview with Jerry Cantrell talking about, maybe it was on Dirt, their album Dirt. I think they had 6 cabinets they were miking, and at least 3, maybe 6, but everyone was covering a different frequency. There was a high end, high mids, mid range, low mids, low, something to that effect. I don't know the exact specifications, but they were essentially using this technique. But in the real world with many amps and many cabs and lots of mics and trouble, and it'd be a big hassle. I think he kind of commented after the fact he wasn't sure if it was worth the trouble, but very little trouble in doing this. And again, I like it a lot. Again, if we were going to just have one single take, versus having 3. It just works. And, while we're in Ableton, let's look at some other things we can do on the master track, just for fun. I mean, it doesn't really need much, but a couple things I like to do. I always like to put a limiter on there, basically just to catch the top. If anything, if we pushed any of the levels too high and they're going to be too much, it's going to catch. So right now, let's see, our ceiling is set to minus 0.3 dB. So I'm going to push some of these too high just to watch the limiter work. I've given the look ahead a little bit so I can look down the line a little bit and see what's coming. So you can see I pushed this track till it was way peaking, way over the line, and the limiter caught it. And it really didn't sound bad. I mean, I wouldn't do that on purpose, but it's good to have there. So if I didn't have this limiter, let's see, we're peaking everywhere. So very, very useful. I tend to have that on there as well. Some of the other effects, I like, there's a multi-band compressor, multi-band dynamics that's pretty cool. And what that allows you to do is apply the compression to different frequency bands. This sort of situation, we pretty much got the tone dialed in. It's not so applicable for this, but if you have a full track, we got bass, drums, vocals, guitars, sometimes, it helps to be able to tame in the form of compression for, like, the mid range is a little weird. You can dial that back, or if it needs a bump on the high or low, or pull back the bass, it's there to do that. I'll just play around with it, let you hear it. So it kind of works as a pseudo EQ, but instead of actually boosting, cutting the EQ, you're compressing and expanding. So in this case, you wouldn't need it, but just to let you know, like, that's a good thing that I like to have on. The saturator adds a little bit of slight overdrive. Not like, when I say overdrive, guitar players are going to think, big time distortion. It's more of a subtle thing. So he just pushes it, You know, it's a good plugin to put on the master bus of any mix anyway. So that's a fun one. If we're going to look at third-party plugins that kind of do something in that vein, this True Iron I like a lot. Let's bump this over here. So this is a similar kind of thing. It's like a saturator. Seeing here is just a little more, which is really cool when you're finishing up tracks. It's fun to put that on there. There's all kinds of stuff. I enjoy a lot of the plugins. The Sound Toys, where is... I'm looking right past it, I know. Let's use the handy dandy search feature. I just never mind. I just updated this computer and I haven't I just updated some of my plugins and I haven't reinstalled all of them. See, there you go. This is a prime example where sometimes third-party plugins can be a little aggravating because you don't have. Sometimes you have these moments where you don't have everything reinstalled just right. So anyway, that's not a big deal. I'll fix that, but. You know, there's a real world example of when sometimes third-party plugins can be a little aggravating because you have to manage them and make sure you reinstall and when you do updates, all that sort of stuff, they need to be there. So anyway, kind of glad I ran into that problem so I could show it to you in real time. So yeah, like I said, you can use a multitude of different plugins and sounds. And, you know, I use 3 different plugins here. But you don't have to. Like I could have used any of the 3 of these across 3 tracks with 3 different settings and accomplish the same goal. You don't need 3 different plugins. These are some I just happen to have installed. So I wanted to use just to show you 3 different ones. So I hope that was useful and kind of gives you an idea of how to use plugins, what they are, particularly in the world of being a guitar player. How you would set that up and use that and ways to utilize it and ways to increase the how much you enjoy and like the sound you're putting out. Because live, you're typically, it's you and a guitar, you're going to have a sound, but in the recording environment, we have the luxury of being able to add on to that and stretch it out and pan it and use different tones and that sort of thing, which can really give new life to a track and really fill out a track. When you hear songs on the radio and they have that wall of sound, as they say, very thick guitars and we're saying for vocals, double tracking and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, hope this was helpful. And if it is, please leave a like below, comment, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. And if there's anything I didn't cover related to this, let me know in the comments. If there's anything else you'd like to see in Ableton regarding being a guitar player and how to figure it out. Or if you're not a guitar player, just have Ableton questions, let me know. And we'll see if we can get around to doing something with it and helping you guys out. As always, thanks for watching the video. I appreciate you guys. And until next time, we'll see you.